Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 343. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today, I'm going to talk about what to do when you feel like you're not good enough, which should not be a surprising topic for you if you've listened to any of this podcast or if you've read any of my business mindset books. This is probably one of the biggest topics that my soul came to experience and grow through with past in this lifetime. So this is kind of a topic that I've been working on a lot over the years, and I keep improving on it, but it's like that spiral staircase I always talk about. Like, you do the mindset work, you take the practical action, you move up the staircase, and then you get to a new level of the same thing you've been working on. But it's kind of like you're going deeper and deeper into the topic. And as I was putting my notes together, my bullet points for this episode, I was thinking, I feel like I need to preface this topic by saying that, I don't want people to get the wrong impression when I share all of my stories for you. I feel like a lot of time in this podcast, I'm kind of dredging up all of the aspects of my shadow side and displaying them out here for you to see and to listen to, and then talking to you about how I work through this stuff and how you can work through it as well. But I'm aware that it might also give the impression that I'm really struggling. And I'm not. Generally speaking, I'm high functioning. Life is great. I'm really, really happy. So many things have been coming together for me in the past few years, and life is really, really spectacular. And at the same time that life is spectacular, I still have these shadow bits that I'm working on as part of my own personal growth and personal development. And it's the fact that I've been working on all the shadow stuff for the last 10 years of my life that has led me to be in such a great place in my life. And I think this is important for me to share with you because just because life is great doesn't mean that I'm putting a pause on my personal growth, my personal development, or my mindset work, or my inner work, or my healing. Like, I'm still doing it. And as I've talked about in previous podcast episodes, sometimes it feels like the onion is infinite, like I'm peeling off the layers of the onion and there's still stuff to heal. And of course, it's up to you to decide when, if and when you're going to stop doing this work. You don't have to keep working on personal growth and healing stuff forever. You can stop whenever you want. I have not reached the point where I'm ready to stop. I enjoy this work. I feel like it's a very important part of my life. And so I continue to work. And I continue to see the results in my life. Life keeps getting easier. It keeps getting better. It keeps getting so much more satisfying and fulfilling. And I absolutely know that is a direct result of the inner work that I do. Again, what works for me may not be right for everyone else. But as I always use myself as an example, and as I always use my own personal stories as kind of the kickstart to each beginning of the podcast, I thought it was important for me to call this out. You can stop whenever you want. You can take a break whenever you want. Do what works for you. And if you've read any of my business mindset books, you know that is very much an overarching theme in everything that I talk about and everything that I teach. You absolutely need to find what works for you. I use myself as an example. So, what are you going to learn today? I'm going to talk about practical steps you can take when you're not feeling good enough. I'm going to discuss how you can learn from a specific experience or situation where you were left feeling not good enough. I'm going to talk about how to get a higher perspective on the experience and see it from a different place. And I think that can be really helpful. I'm going to talk about how to use the situation for your own personal growth and development. And finally, how to use the experience for good and not to beat yourself up. I talked about this a little bit in episode 341, which was the importance of failure and how to make the most of it. So this is kind of the flip side of the coin of episode 31. I'm going to be talking about situations where you don't exactly feel like a failure, but yet you still feel like you're not good enough. It's a very subtle difference, but it's still not a great place to be in. So that's why I think this is really important to talk about. So, what inspired this episode? Yesterday, I did the very first, for me, interclub. It's kind of like a mini kickboxing tournament put together by my school where other local clubs participate. And it's a really good opportunity to have kind of a mini tournament feeling and to fight other people that perhaps you don't know from other schools and to get experience in kind of an easy and comfortable setting because it's held in the same hall where we usually have classes. So it's a familiar setting. It's small. Its instructors are there. A lot of the other instructors from other clubs that you've seen from gradings are there. So it's kind of a safe environment to have your first kind of tournament type experience. And my school puts these on, I think 3 times a year, just about every year. And I haven't done them just because I didn't feel like it. And then this year, since I'm hoping to do my black belt grading either at the end of this year or next year, I have to sign up for an actual tournament because my club requires us to have done at least one tournament before we do our black belt grading, just so that we've had that experience. So I was talking to my instructor a couple weeks ago, and he said, it would be good experience for Bristol, which is the tournament that I've signed up for in April. He said it'd be good experience for that if you did the interclub next week. And I thought, okay, I've got time in my calendar, I'll just do it. And I did it, and it was a really good experience. I learned a lot from it. I'm really glad I had this experience before doing the bigger tournament, and I'm actually feeling a lot better about doing the bigger tournament in April. However, there were supposed to be 6 women in my division. Not everyone turned up, so there ended up being 4 of us. It was 4 other women and me, 1 of whom I knew, 2 of whom I didn't know. And I always get a little nervous about fighting people that I don't know, just because I don't know what to expect. And that always throws me off. I think that throws off a lot of people, but perhaps me a little bit more because of my autism. I really like knowing exactly what I'm working with. So I won 1 fight and I lost 2 fights, and I ended up getting bronze. So 3 out of the 4 of us got medals. And really pleased on one hand with myself for showing up, really pleased with myself for getting the bronze, and simultaneously disappointed with myself for not doing better, because part of my brain keeps saying, not good enough, not good enough. So that's what led me to do this episode, because I think so many times we have parts of our mind that are really conflicting. Like parts are saying, oh, good job. And other parts are going, no, totally, you're crap. So I think it's important to acknowledge this. So one of the first steps, I think, is to, when you're in a situation like this, give yourself the time and the space to really look at the situation or the experience. You can journal about it, think about it. I find it really useful to get this kind of stuff down in writing, or in my case, podcast about it. Write a blog post about it. I think sharing our experiences like this is really helpful because it shows people that they're not the only ones experiencing this kind of thing. And I personally really learn from other people's personal experiences, which is why I always share my stuff with you. So give yourself the time and space to really just explore the situation. Write it down, whether it's in your journal or your blog, talk about it with a friend, talk about it on a podcast, or do a video about it, whatever medium works for you. But what's really important is to identify and acknowledge your feelings. So for me, I have these conflicting feelings. Like on one hand, I'm really proud of myself for showing up, for doing it. It was definitely outside my comfort zone. I was nervous about the fight, but I wasn't scared of the two women that I didn't know. And sometimes when I'm on a mat with someone, I can feel the fear and I can feel that I'm scared of the person. And I didn't feel fear. I wasn't scared of them. And so I acknowledge that as well. And that's really important. And I won one of the fights. So that's also important to acknowledge. And so I'm acknowledging these things that were good about the experience. And I also acknowledge my feelings. How do I feel? I feel disappointed that I didn't win 2 of the fights or 3 of the fights. I really thought I would do better, and I didn't. So what am I feeling? I'm feeling disappointed. I'm feeling, again, like I'm not good enough. But I am also feeling proud of myself. So there's a lot of conflicting stuff going on in there. So that's why it's really important for you to give yourself the time and space to really identify and acknowledge your feelings. And remember, whatever the situation is, whether it's a competition, a sports thing, or, I don't know, business networking meeting, or something that you did at your job, maybe you worked on a project and it didn't go well, remember that you showed up. People often mock participation certificates, that they give little kids when they show up for something. But the thing is, plenty of people don't show up for things. There were supposed to be 6 women in my division. 2 of them didn't show up. Maybe they were unwell. That's fine. Maybe they had perfectly valid reasons. That's fine. It doesn't matter what their reasons are. The fact is that you showed up. I showed up yesterday. Other people didn't. There were actually several people in several divisions that just didn't show up yesterday and didn't let the organizers know that they weren't going to show up. So lots of people didn't show up yesterday. Lots of people don't show up for all kinds of things in life. So it's really important for you to acknowledge that you did show up. So whether the situation, the event, the experience, whether that was outside of your comfort zone, whether it was easy for you, maybe you think, oh, it was a small thing, it wasn't that big a deal. It doesn't matter. You showed up for it. You showed up and you tried and you did. Maybe you did your best. Maybe you think you could have done better, but you did the thing. You did the thing, you showed up, and that is super important to acknowledge. I think people don't place enough weight on that. There were so many opportunities that I had in previous years to sign up for the interclubs, to sign up for tournaments, to sign up for all kinds of stuff like this, and I never did. The fact that I did yesterday and I learned so much from the experience makes me want to do it more, but it also helps me to see the importance of showing up for stuff like this. So give yourself a round of applause for showing up and doing the thing that you did, no matter what it was. No matter how big or small, don't minimize it. You showed up for the thing. Next, and I think this is a really important part, identify the learning opportunities in the experience. What have you learned from this? So for me, what I learned was, as always, it's really important to get out of my comfort zone and do things like this. Like kickboxing is important for me. It's important for me to get better. And therefore, I need to step outside of my comfort zone when doing kickboxing things. So the fact that I signed up for this was really important. What else did I learn? And this is a mindset thing. We were chatting with some of the other 2 women before the event, and something about them didn't seem super confident. I think that was one of the things that made me kind of feel really comfortable about fighting them, because they didn't seem super confident fighters, and yet they both beat me. And so I think I really need to acknowledge that no matter what people say to me before a fight, no matter what impression I get from them, don't believe that. Don't drop my guard, literally or figuratively. Don't get comfortable. Assume that it's going to be challenging and act accordingly. That's another thing that I learned. Another thing is listen to the coaches. So there were people from my club kind of standing behind me, coaching me. And at first I didn't hear them because I was so focused on what I was doing. And then I started hearing help from people behind me. And it was really, really useful. So lessons learned, be aware that there are people that are going to be coaching me. I forgot that because it had been ages since I had done, anything like this. And listen to their advice. Like on the fight that I won, the other woman started out winning. And then I started listening to my coaches telling me to do things differently. And I started doing things differently, and it worked in my favor. So, listen to advice. If you have people that you trust, and these were just other students from my club who are competing on a regular basis, who are good, who are successful. When you have people like this, mentors, coaches, friends with experience, whatever, when you have people like this who can give you solid advice, listen to them and follow their advice and see how it works for you. It worked for me. It was really, really helpful. Even on the fights that I lost, I was listening to their advice and I was implementing it, and I still lost. That was fine. But when I noticed that when I listened to their advice, I scored points. And when I didn't, I, might score a point, I might not. But listening to that advice was super, super helpful. So that's another thing I learned. Always be aware of what people are saying to me when I'm in the middle of the fight, how they're trying to help me. It was it made all the difference. So I could probably go on, but you don't want to hear all the details. So those were some examples. Identify the learning opportunities in the experience. Maybe you feel like you weren't good enough. What did you learn? What have you learned from the experience? And the next thing I think you need to ask yourself before moving on into the next question is, do you want to do this thing again? So kickboxing. Do I want to do it again? Of course. Is it important to me? Yes. Is it a priority? Yes. So ask yourself these questions. Do you want to do this thing again? Do you want to have this similar experience, situation, event again? Is it important for you to do it again? Is it a priority in your life? If so, then, assuming that you're going to do this thing again, identify what you could do differently next time. What can you do to get a different outcome and perhaps even the desired outcome? So for me, what could I do differently? First of all, don't trust the impression I get from other people while chatting with them before a fight. Don't get overly comfortable. Don't relax. Always stay focused. That's definitely one of the things that I can do differently. Next, remember that people are going to be coaching me and keep my ears open from the start, because I really missed out on a few points on the very first fight because I wasn't even, my ears weren't listening to them. I was so focused on fighting that I wasn't hearing the words that were coming from behind me. So that's really useful. What could I do differently? Sign up for more of these. Unfortunately, I can't do the other 2 interclub dates for the rest of the year, but I need to be aware that these things are happening and put myself out for them more. It's really, really useful. And if I want to achieve my kickboxing goals, I need to get myself out of my comfort zone and start fighting with new and different people. So what can you do differently the next time to get your desired outcome, or at least to get a different outcome? And next, get perspective. So look at where this experience fits into your overall goals. So for me, this interclub was just one step on the path to where I want to be, which is getting my black belt. So this is a step on the path that next leads to the event in Bristol, which then leads to doing a ton of other stuff, which will hopefully eventually lead to me passing my black belt grading. But for me, this is just one step that fits into my overall path of goals and milestones. So use this experience to see how it fits into your overall goals in life. Again, you might be feeling like you're not good enough, that you didn't do as well as you hoped, but this is one step on the path to where you want to be. This is one milestone that will lead to the next milestone, that will lead to who knows how many other milestones to you achieving your goals. It's really important to get this higher perspective. This is just one event on the path to achieving your goals, to being where you want to be. Next question to ask yourself, how else can you improve? So for me, I'm taking private classes every Thursday. When I get to the class on Thursday, I'm definitely going to be asking Sean what I can do, what I did wrong. He was one of the referees for the fight, so he saw everything I did. He knows everything I did wrong and everything I did right. So I need to get his perspective on that. So I need to ask for help. And I need to just keep putting myself out there and doing things that scare me and doing things that are outside of my comfort zone in terms of kickboxing so that I can improve. So how else can you improve? How can you get help, support, or advice? For me, again, it's asking my trainer, asking him what I can do to improve. He's been helping me on that, but now we have new data, we have new experiences, we have new stuff that he can help, give me advice on. So next is to celebrate your successes. And this is something I always forget to do. No matter how big, no matter how small, no matter what size, always celebrate your successes. So what's the success for me? I showed up. That's a success. I won the bronze. Yes, I won the bronze because there were 4 people and there weren't that many people that I fought. That's diminishing it. Don't go there. I won a bronze medal. I showed up. I stepped out of my comfort zone. These are successes. So don't allow yourself to diminish them by saying, oh, yes, I won this or I achieved this, but delete those buts and just make it a complete sentence. I showed up. I did the thing. I won the medal. Period. Celebrate your successes no matter how big or small. Either, have a nice meal, have something special with yourself or with your family, with your partner, whatever. Celebrate it in a Facebook group with friends. Celebrate it with, whatever works for you. But celebrate your successes. Make sure that you are acknowledging your successes. Because the more you get into the habit of doing this, the more successes you'll have. And finally, I said this in episode 341, but this is really, really, really important for me to reiterate here, is to use the experience for good, not to beat yourself up. So the process that I walked you through today was how to use this experience where you feel like you're not good enough, how to use it for your personal development, how to use it to get better, how to use it to get perspective, how to use it to improve, how to use it for your growth, and how not to use it to beat yourself up. So when you feel that shitty part of your mind saying, oh, yeah, you won the medal, but there were only 3 other people, or you did this thing, but you didn't win. Don't give that part of your brain space to run wild. Rein it in. And the way you rein it in is to change your focus. Don't focus on what you don't want. Focus on what you do want. And this is really, really important. So when your crappy mind gremlins are saying, oh, not good enough, that's where you need to stop and then focus on using the experience for good. Focus on asking yourself these questions. How can you improve? What did you learn? Acknowledge your feelings. I'm going to put this stuff in the show notes, but go through this process with yourself. Every time you're in a situation where you feel like not good enough, stop and analyze the situation. Identify and acknowledge your feelings. Remember that you showed up. Acknowledge this. Identify the learning opportunities. Identify what you could do differently the next time. How can you get your desired outcome? How can you get a different outcome? Get a perspective. Get a different perspective. Look at where this experience fits into your overall goals. This is just one step on the path to where you want to be in life, to where you want to be with achieving your goals. These experiences where we feel not good enough can be so, so useful if we focus on using the experience for good rather than falling victim to our mind gremlins and beating ourselves up over it. This is a really kind of light and simple experience or example that I've given you here. It's something that's not life-changing or earth-shattering, but I was very much aware of these conflicting parts of my mind. And so it was really, really, really important for me to share this story with you because, I think this stuff happens to us a lot. We have a disappointment. Something happens where we feel like, that didn't come out the way I wanted it to. And we can either use it for good or use it to beat ourselves up. Identify how you want to feel and focus on that. Focus on how you can use these experiences for improvement. And, maybe as an exercise, go back. If you have any other stuff in your life that you're still beating yourself up for, go back and go through this process again. Make a list of all the stuff, all the times, all the things that have made you feel not good enough, and go through this process and flip it around. They're all learning experiences. They're just steps on the path to where we want to be. So, I hope you found this interesting and useful. Please drop me a line and let me know what you thought about this week's episode. You can email me at holly@hollyworton.com or find me online and get in touch there. As always, I would love for you to join me on Patreon. If you head to patreon.com/hollywharton, you can join me there. It's a fantastic way for you to support this podcast if you feel like you get use out of it. I would really love to have your support. You can start at just $1 a month, and that's very helpful. It adds to the pot. So thank you so much for listening. Next week's episode is going to be a joint episode with the fantastic Joanna Hennon. It's a really juicy episode where we talk about how to accept the parts of yourself that don't fit with your self-image. And this is a really great topic that was inspired by a listener who wrote in, and we decided to just roll with it right away. So what will you learn next week? We're going to talk about how to accept all of yourself. We're going to talk about why it's and or, not either or. How to accept the opposites within yourself. Why it's impossible to fit yourself into a mold. Why it's so important to talk about these guilty pleasures with people in your life. So we're talking about the things that we really enjoy doing, whether it's music or film or television, that we're embarrassed to talk about because they don't fit in with our self-image or the self-image that we want to project to people. Finally, we talk about how to get started with accepting your guilty pleasures and how to talk about them with others. So I think it's a really juicy episode. I really like the episodes with Joanna. I think we dig deep into the topics. And so that's next week. Thank you very much for listening. Remember to visit hollyworton.com/343 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollyworton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.